end, the picture is small, only about 4 inches wide. Its edges are worn smooth by time. A young girl stands in front of a brick building. Her white dress catches the afternoon light. She is maybe 7 years old. Her dark hair is pinned back. One small hand is raised toward the camera in a wave. Her smile is wide and innocent, the kind that belongs to a child who does not yet know the world's cruelty. Behind her, the building stands tall like an institution. Its windows look like blank eyes. The year is 1909. For more than 100 years, this image stayed forgotten in a city archive, stored away as just another old school photo. But when a historian decided to restore the fading print with modern tools, something hidden in the original negative came to light. What experts later discovered would change how we see that moment in history. Dr. Elena Marsh had worked for 30 years in the Pennsylvania State Archives, and she thought she had seen it all. Old Civil War letters, old land deeds, and damaged photos where faces had become blurry spots. But something about the small photo that reached her desk in March 2019 made her stop. It had come from a donation box in an estate sale in Erie. The note with it was short, pictures from an old school building around the 1900s. There were 12 photos in total. Most were class pictures or teacher photos. This one was different. It showed a single girl standing alone, waving at the camera. Elena held it up to the light. The photo surface was badly damaged. The contrast was so poor that details had faded into gray. Still, something about the girl's face caught her eye. The smile looked forced, tight at the corners. The building behind her looked like an institution, the kind built for orphanages, asylums, or reform schools. She quickly searched the archives database for Erie County places from 1900 to 1915. 3 results appeared: the Sisters of Mercy Orphanage, the Erie County Home for the Friendless, and the Western Pennsylvania Industrial School for Girls. The last one made her pause. The industrial school had a bad reputation in its time. It was where they sent girls labeled as troublesome runaways, orphans, immigrants, girls who did not speak English well, or children whose only issue was poverty or no family to protect them. The building had been torn down in 1962, and its records were said to be destroyed. Elena decided to restore the photograph using a special scanner and digital tools. She slowly brought out details from the damaged negative. First the brick wall, then the window frames, then faint letters above the door that read Industrial School for Girls 1897. She zoomed in on the girl's face. As the software sharpened the image, Elena saw tears on her cheeks, faint but clear. The wave was not happy. It was desperate to goodbye. Then she noticed something else. On the girl's left wrist, partly covered by her sleeve, was a dark band. She increased the contrast. It was not a bracelet. It was a leather strap, the kind used to tie someone down. Elena's stomach tightened. She zoomed out and scanned the whole picture again. That's when she saw them shadows in the background inside the doorway. 2 adults were watching. One held something in their hand, maybe a strap or a cane. She turned the photo over. Someone had written in pencil, now faded but still readable, Mary K. Intake Day, September 14, 1909. Intake Day, the day a child entered the place. Elena knew what that meant. This was not a school picture. It was proof of arrival, a record that the girl had entered the system. If there was an intake photo, she thought there might be other records, admission lists, punishment books, or release papers. She began searching for any surviving documents from the Western Pennsylvania Industrial School for Girls. What she found would take her 3 years to fully uncover. The Western Pennsylvania Industrial School for Girls opened in 1897. It was funded by state money and private donations from wealthy Pittsburgh families. On paper, it was a reform school meant to educate and guide troubled girls. In reality, it was much darker. Elena spent weeks reading old newspaper articles from the early 1900s. Most praised the school as a helpful social service that turned troubled girls into useful citizens. But in a few papers, she found other stories. In 1903, the Erie Daily Times ran a short piece about a girl who escaped the school. She was caught 3 days later hiding in a barn 12 miles away. When brought back, she said she would rather die than return. The article called her claims wild exaggeration. No follow-up was ever printed. In 1907, a letter to the editor in a socialist paper called The People's Voice was written by a woman named Agnes Walcott, a former teacher at the school. She described prison-like conditions, Girls locked in isolation cells for small mistakes, forced to work 10-hour days in the laundry without pay, and beaten with leather straps for speaking out. The superintendent, a man named Horace Petton, sued her for defamation. Agnes Walcott's name never appeared in print again. Elena saw Petton's name many times. He ran the school from 1899 to 1918, almost 20 years. During that time, the school grew from 30 girls to over 150. State inspections were rare and short. When they happened, Petton made sure inspectors saw only clean dorms, obedient girls, and orderly classrooms. But Elena also found a hidden money scandal. In 1911, an auditor learned that Petton was charging the state for feeding and clothing 150 girls while spending less than half that amount. The girls ate watery soup and stale bread. Their clothes were rags. The extra money went into Petton's pocket and those of some board members. The scandal was never made public. The state quietly replaced the auditor, kept sending money, and Petton kept his job. No one was punished. Eleanor realized the school had almost total freedom. The girls sent there had no one to protect them. Many were immigrant children whose parents spoke little English. Others were orphans. Those who spoke out were called liars or troublemakers. The system was built to keep them silent. Elena looked again at the photo of Mary Kay. This girl was only 7 years old when she entered that building. 7. What could a 7-year-old have done to deserve this? She searched for admission records to learn why Mary had been sent there. What she found in a box of water-damaged documents at the Erie County Historical Society made her hands shake. Mary's reason was written neatly: vagrancy and troublesome behavior. The details said she was found begging on the street after her mother's death. No known relatives. She had refused to go quietly with authorities. Mary had committed no crime. She was an orphan, alone and afraid. For that, she had been sent to the industrial school. Elena knew she needed more than old newspapers and money records. She needed to learn what really happened to Mary Kay. Most of the school's internal papers were thought to have been destroyed when the building was torn down in 1962. She contacted local historical groups, family history clubs, and relatives of former staff. Most leads went nowhere. Then in August 2019, she received an email from a woman named Patricia Holbrook. Her grandmother had been a nurse at the school from 1908 to 1912. Patricia said her grandmother had left a box of papers she never understood and offered to share them. Elena drove to Patricia's house in Meadville the next day. The box held medical logs, unofficial notes the nurse had kept hidden. They were small notebooks. Each entry was short: a girl's initials, a date, and a description of injuries or illness. Elena's hands shook as she read them. The entries were shocking. One said, CIR, age 9, bruises on back and arms fell per superintendent. Another, LM, age 11, burn marks on hands, kitchen accident per matron. The explanations were lies, and the nurse knew it. She had written tiny notes in the margins: strap marks or punishment cell. On September 20th, 1909, 6 days after Mary Kay's intake photo, there was an entry: MK, age 7, will not eat. Crying constantly. Straps applied. Elena found 3 more entries for Mary in the following weeks: isolation cell for refusing work, fever in the infirmary, and then transferred to the county hospital with pneumonia. After that, nothing. Mary's name never appeared again. Elena contacted the Erie County Hospital records. After some delays, she found Mary's name. Mary Kowalski had been admitted on October 28, 1909 with severe pneumonia and lack of food. She weighed only 38 pounds. Her body was covered in bruises and welts. The doctor noted signs of long-term physical abuse and neglect. Mary died on November 3, 1909. She was 7 years old. She had been at the industrial school for exactly 50 days. The death certificate listed the cause as pneumonia and complications. There was no mention of abuse. No investigation followed. The body was given back to the school for burial in the institution's unmarked cemetery. Elena sat in her office staring at the photo of Mary waving. That wave had been taken 50 days before her death, 50 days of isolation, punishment, hunger, and fear. She thought about the other girls in the nurse's log and wondered how many had died or carried the pain for the rest of their lives. Elena decided she would tell Mary's story and find where she was buried. Her search led her to a cemetery researcher named Thomas Clay, who specialized in forgotten graves. Together, they visited the old school site, now a shopping plaza covered in asphalt. Thomas had old maps from the 1950s showing the school's small cemetery in the northwest corner with about 40 graves. When the building was torn down, the remains were supposed to be moved, but there was no record of any reburial. The graves were likely still there, under the parking lot. Elena felt angry. These girls had been erased in life, and now even their graves were hidden. She contacted a local investigative journalist. Within a week, the story broke with strong headlines about forgotten children, a reform school, and graves lost under a shopping center. The article included Mary's photo and details of her death. Public anger grew quickly. While the story spread, Eleanor received a package in the mail. Inside was an old letter with a note saying it had been found in the sender's great-aunt's papers. The letter was dated November 10, 1909, just 7 days after Mary's death. It was written in a child's careful but uneven handwriting. The signature reads Annie T., one of the girls from the nurse's log. Eleanor read it with tears in her eyes. The letter said, "Dear someone, I do not know who will read this. I am writing because Mary died and nobody is going to remember her. She was my friend. She came here in September and cried every night because she missed her mama. Her mama died and that is why they sent her here. She did nothing wrong, she was just sad. They put her in the quiet room a lot because she cried too much. The quiet room is dark and cold and you have to stay there until you stop crying. But Mary could not stop. She was too little to understand. She got sick and they did not help her fast enough. By the time they took her to the hospital, she could not breathe right. I wanted to say goodbye, but they would not let me. They buried her in the back where there are no names. Just a number. Number 23. I want someone to know that Mary was real. She liked birds. She used to watch them out the window and name them. She called one Margaret and one Polly. She said when she got out she was going to have 100 birds and they would all be her friends. She never got out. Please remember Mary. Annie. Elena held the letter gently. This was more than proof of abuse. It was proof of Mary's humanity, proof that she had been loved even in that terrible place. Annie had made, and sure of that. Public pressure grew strong. Within 2 months, the Pennsylvania state legislature ordered a full investigation of the burial site. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed 43 graves under the parking lot. In April 2021, the state approved funding for a proper excavation and reburial. The shopping center owner, facing heavy criticism, agreed to provide land for a memorial. Work began that summer. Elena was there the day the graves were uncovered. Each was marked with a simple wooden stake and a number. Number 23 was in the second row. Inside the small coffin, barely 3 feet long, were the bones of a child along with a piece of white fabric and a small metal button. DNA could not confirm the identity because there were no living relatives, but the size and age of the bones matched Mary Kowalski's records. Elena chose to believe it was her. The reburial took place on a cold November morning, almost exactly 112 years after Mary's death. The new cemetery sat on a hill overlooking the town, a peaceful place with trees and open sky. Each girl received a proper headstone with her name if known, or simply Child of God if not. Mary's headstone read, Mary Kowalski, 1902 to 1909. She liked birds. Elena had insisted on that last line from Annie's letter. It was important that people know something about Mary beyond how she died. She had been a real child who loved birds, named them, and dreamed of freedom. Over 300 people attended the memorial service. Many were relatives of girls who had been at the school. Some shared their family stories for the first time. A state representative gave a speech admitting the system's failures. The governor issued a formal apology. It was not enough, Elena thought, but it was a start. After the service, Elena stood alone at Mary's grave for a long time. She thought about the photograph, the desperate wave, and the 7-year-old girl who had lost her mother and then everything else. I am sorry, she whispered. I am sorry it took us so long. A small sparrow landed on the headstone, tilted its head, and then flew away into the gray November sky. Elena smiled through her tears. She liked to think Mary would have named that one too. The photograph of Mary waving now hangs in the Pennsylvania State Museum as part of an exhibit on child welfare reform and institutional abuse. A plaque below it tells her story and the stories of the other girls. The exhibit ends with Annie's letter in a glass case. The final line is printed large on the wall behind it. Please remember Mary. People do now. Finally, people do. Mary Kowalski's story is not unique. Thousands of children passed through reform schools, orphanages, and industrial schools in the early 20th century. Many suffered abuse and neglect. Many died and were buried in unmarked graves. For too long, their stories were erased and dismissed as inconvenient truths from a past we preferred to forget. But photographs like Mary's survive. Documents survive. And when we take the time to look closely and restore what was hidden, we find the truth waiting. History remembers what we choose to see and what we choose to forget. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, comment your thoughts, and subscribe.